This is live from the Heartland, and I'm your host today, Lisa Smith. We were just talking to Justine Nagin, documentary filmmaker, and I now have Ed Stellon. And Ed, you are the Director of Resource and Community Development at the Heartland Alliance for Mental Health and Addiction Services?
Yeah, my little corner of Heartland Alliance is called Mental Health and Addiction Services. Yeah, Heartland Alliance is a pretty large organization.
I was going to say, it was confusing to me because if you go to idealist.org, if you're interested in sort of socially meaningful, culturally meaningful employment, you can go to idealist.org.
Yep.
And there are lots and lots of jobs for the Heartland Alliance. And I was just thinking, where did this huge, I've asked myself this question, and now I know the answer, where did this huge, seemingly huge, widespread organization come from? And it turns out that the Heartland Alliance has actually been around as different organizations for over 100 years.
Yes. Yep.
In 1888, it began as Travelers Aid, and also Jane Addams Hull House had an operation called League for Protection of Immigrants, and they were around for years and years, the both of them. Mm-hmm. And then they joined together.
That's right.
Now, when they joined together, they sort of formed this one
larger organization, right.
And which is now known as the Heartland Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
But the Heartland Alliance, you focus on mental health and addiction services. But the Heartland Alliance, if we're going to give it some credit here on on the radio, is also established the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless and the AIDS Foundation of Chicago. You guys are really busy.
Yeah, we are really busy.
I mean, what don't you do?
Not too much. It's called Heartland Alliance for Human Needs and Human Rights, and the whole idea behind Heartland Alliance is that human rights kind of our quest or our striving for human rights really drives our work. We talk about ourselves as service-based human rights workers, and we provide housing and health care, legal protections and advocacy for the folks who are most marginalized here in Chicago and really throughout the world, because we have offices now in areas where there's conflict in Afghanistan, Iraq, Rwanda.
That was another thing that was surprising to me when I was looking at the Heartland Alliance website, that you have international programs as well. Mm-hmm. It's like, aren't you busy enough here in the Midwest? I mean, where are you all getting all this money? I mean, seriously, a lot of social service operations are really strained, particularly now, to find the funds to do the work that they normally do. Why are you so successful, do you think?
That's a good question, and actually that's something that falls into my little realm.
Oh, it does? Good.
Yes, and one of the things that we've always done is essentially what we do is we do the work first. In mental health and addiction services, we do outreach to homeless people who have serious mental illness. We also provide mental health services to refugees and their families. And as we do the work and we get to know the people, we start to recognize that they have a wide array of needs. And so we start patching together sort of a continuum of services to meet these different needs. And we knock on different doors, the federal government, different parts of the federal government, housing and urban development, gives us funding.
So you're sort of like a little liaison that puts together a custom tailored social service package for people depending on what their particular needs are.
I like that, actually. I'm going to have to use that, but that is you really hit the nail on the head in that we meet people, we recognize that they have an array of different needs, and we try to wrap services around them that meet those things. And it's a really come-as-you-are approach. That's that harm reduction piece that we were talking about earlier. But this idea of just meeting people where they're at and engaging them just around what they're ready to do in their lives.
Now, the main reason I wanted to talk to you is because we've had on the show before representatives from a local group called Women's Empowerment, I think it's
the Young Women's Empowerment Project.
Yes, and they're quite amazing. And the woman who actually established that is quite amazing, although no longer running it per her plan. But their interesting approach, and it sounds like you use the same rather controversial approach to doing the work that you do, and that is the harm reduction, not do no harm, the harm reduction approach, which is controversial because a lot of a lot of organizations will not fund that.
Yeah,
at least that's what I was
especially
told.
at the federal level. There's some,
right, because if it has to do with birth control, if condoms, like
needle exchange,
none of that will be funded. And if your organization is involved in that, you're not going to get federal funds. Is that correct?
Right, especially with needle exchange. Yeah, harm reduction is really, it's
let's define that,
Sure,
shall we?
Harm reduction is a really pragmatic approach to working with people who engage in really any kind of high-risk behavior, but it's especially controversial, I think, when we're talking about people who engage in drug or alcohol use, especially drug use.
Well, and the Young Women's Empowerment Network or project was women engaging in sex to survive and or for money.
Right.
Not officially prostitutes, but
sex workers.
Sex workers is the term. But I'm trying to look for a concrete example here instead of sort of talking in the abstract.
Sure.
So give me a for instance of where harm reduction might be used in your organization and why it might be controversial.
Okay. A good example just to start with is needle exchange, for instance. And as we engage people on the streets, and some of them are injection drug users, what we're going to do is help them understand a little bit more about some of the risks associated with sharing needles, for instance. And we're going to link them with a needle exchange program, which there's one right around the corner from where we work. And needle exchange is an example of, this is an individual who's today going to make the decision to inject a drug, illicit drug, right? And we know that there's a lot of dangers involved with sharing needles, with injecting improperly, all this kind of stuff.
What are some of those dangers, for instance? I mean, other than contracting AIDS, potentially.
HIV infection, hepatitis C infection, hepatitis B infection, potentially. But in addition to that, even if you use a clean needle, injecting improperly, not cleaning the site of injection, injecting over and over in the same spot, there's risks involved with that lead to things like abscesses and infections anywhere in your body. So these are kind of concrete, almost mechanical aspects of drug use that we try to address in a real direct, open way with people.
Okay, but how exactly is harm reduction going to help somebody with an addiction?
Well, I like to think of it this way. Harm reduction, on a certain level, it's a set of practical strategies to help reduce the harm. But more importantly, when we're engaging people, we're really linking our lives to their lives. We're engaging in a relationship with people. And harm reduction really allows us to look at life from his or her perspective, our program participant's perspective. And in so doing, that person becomes a little more interested in working with us, a little bit more committed to kind of looking at what's going on in their lives. And we're able to march along with them in that journey as they make small little choices that reduce the harm along the way, using less, using differently, using with safer people, avoiding certain situations. And as they do so, they start moving toward often even larger changes, like complete reduction of use or eliminating one of the drugs of the many drugs that they use. And that's progress.